everyone. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute. Welcome to Preston's Ponderings. Well, we've been involved in an in-depth study of Matthew 16:27 and 28. And from time to time, I'm notified that somebody here on YouTube has produced a series of videos ostensibly refuting what I have been offering by way of exegesis. And from time to time, I like to produce a video or two to respond to some of those charges that full preterism, covenant eschatology, is heresy. Just recently, at least I think it was recently, a gentleman with whom I've had a couple of radio debates responded with a series of videos calling full preterism heresy. Well, he made a number of charges with no exegesis whatsoever, I might add. But I want to address a couple of the objections that have been lodged. Point number one, he simply made the charge, took note of the fact that full preterists, advocates of covenant eschatology, say all prophecy was fulfilled at the time of the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70. And his response to that was strictly ad hominem. There was no exegesis. There was no attempt to go in depth into the text itself. He just simply said, "This is incredible. I can't believe this." Well, folks, that is no refutation. There's no logic being offered. That is simply a charge of saying it is an argumentum ad absurdum, to use the Latin term. It's essentially saying, the preterists are just so crazy. They can't be true. Well, folks, that's not logic. That's not argumentation. That is not exegesis. It refutes nothing whatsoever. Let's look at the actual text. In a passage that the objector agrees applies to the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70, Jesus said, speaking of that time, "These be the days of vengeance, in which all things that are written must be fulfilled." Now, if Jesus wanted to say that all things, all prophecy would be fulfilled at that time, how better could he have expressed it? Would he have had to say all things that are written? And by the way, guys, I really mean all. I don't mean some, I mean all. No, he didn't have to say that. Jesus said, "These be the days of vengeance, in which all things that are written must be fulfilled." Now, let me illustrate. Because someone will say, well, all that Jesus had in mind was that all things pertaining to the fall of Jerusalem would be fulfilled. Okay, I'll buy that. But you see, what the objector is failing to note is that in the Old Testament, the destruction of Old Covenant Israel is the time of the end. It is the end of the age. It is the time of the resurrection. It is the time of the new creation. A couple of passages very, very quickly. In Isaiah chapter 65, verses 13 and following, the Lord, speaking to Old Covenant Israel, said that the time was coming, the time of the salvation of the remnant, by the way, verse 8. But God speaks to the nation as a whole, and he says, "The Lord God will slay you," Old Covenant Israel, "and call his people by a new name." Now here then is the prediction of the destruction of Old Covenant Israel. What follows? What is the result of that? "For behold, I create a new heaven and a new earth." Now my objector does not have a place in his theology for the destruction of Old Covenant Israel leading directly to the new creation. Therefore, my objector is wrong, flat, dead wrong. Let me say this very kindly. If your theology has no place in it, if your theology has no element in it of the destruction of Old Covenant Israel that leads directly to the new creation, your eschatology is not a biblical eschatology. Thus, here is Isaiah predicting that at the destruction of Old Covenant Israel, the new creation would come into existence. What was Jesus saying? In Luke chapter 21, here is the destruction of Old Covenant Israel when all things written would be fulfilled. Furthermore, in the book of Revelation, it is about the destruction of the city, quote, where the Lord was slain. What is the direct result of the judgment of that city Babylon, the city where the Lord was slain? Well, lo and behold, it's the new heaven and the new earth of Revelation 21. So, just like Isaiah predicted the destruction of Jerusalem, the destruction of Israel, leading to the new creation, Jesus said that in the fall of Jerusalem, when all things that are written would be fulfilled, or that would be the time when all things that are written would be fulfilled. And John picks up on that theme and says that in the fall of Jerusalem, the city where the Lord was slain, by the way, at the sounding of the seventh trumpet, when all that is written in the prophets, Revelation 10 verse 7, would be fulfilled, immediately following that destruction would be the new heaven and the new earth. You see, Isaiah 65, Luke 21, Revelation all agree perfectly. Thus, when we say, oh yes, the fall of Jerusalem, all things written concerning the fall of Jerusalem, the destruction of Israel, that's all Jesus had in mind. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Because the Bible presents and posits the arrival of the new creation at the time of the destruction of Old Covenant Israel. A second passage very, very quickly. In Daniel chapter 12, Daniel foretold the time of the Great Tribulation, Daniel 12 verse 1. He told the time of the resurrection, Daniel 12 verse 2. He foretold the time when the righteous would shine forth in the kingdom, Daniel 12 verse 3. He predicted the end of the age, Daniel chapter 12 verse 4. Wow, what elements are here? These are the elements, all of which are found in Matthew 24 and Luke chapter 21, of course. Now notice, one angel asked the other, when shall these things be? When shall all of these things, not some of them, not a few of them, when shall all of these things be fulfilled? The other angel lifted his hands to heaven and swore by him who lives forever and ever and said, it shall be a time, for a time, times and a half time. Now listen, and when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, all, not some, not a few, not even most, all of these things will be fulfilled. Wait a minute. What was Israel's power? It was Torah, temple, priesthood, sacrifice. Daniel was told by the God of heaven, these were not his ideas. Daniel was told by the God of heaven that when the power of the holy people, i.e. Old Covenant Israel, was completely shattered, the Great Tribulation would be fulfilled. The resurrection would be fulfilled. The righteous shining forth would be fulfilled. The end of the age would be fulfilled. What was Jesus predicting in Luke chapter 21? The shattering, the complete shattering of the power of the holy people. Thus, when my detractor says, can you believe these full preterists who say that all things that are written were fulfilled in AD 70 with the fall of Jerusalem? May I kindly say, and by the way, these Old Testament passages that I brought forth are only a couple. It's far past time for modern Bible students to accept this biblical testimony that the Old Covenant and the New Covenant as well place the fulfillment of all eschatological prophecies at the time of the destruction of Old Covenant Israel, and there is no other time in all of history that better qualifies as the complete destruction of the power of the holy people than AD 70. You know, in coming segments we'll have more to say about some objections that have been offered, but thanks for joining me here in this segment of Preston's Ponderings. We'll see you on the flip side.